Imagine for a moment that everything you've ever been told about morality, about right and wrong, is not some universal truth, but an intricate illusion. What if, instead of being an unshakable law, morality was deliberately crafted as a tool to influence and control human behavior? Consider the possibility that the notions of good and evil, deeply embedded in us since childhood, are not eternal truths, but mechanisms of power. What if everything you believed about ethics wasn't meant to set you free, but to domesticate you? Today, we are diving into one of the most unsettling and controversial ideas in philosophy. The argument that morality, as we understand it, is not a reflection of an absolute truth, but a construct imposed to maintain order and submission. This radical perspective, put forth by Friedrich Nietzsche in Beyond Good and Evil, shakes the very foundation of how we define ethics, justice, and human nature. By the end of this journey, you may be confronted with a truth so profound that it could forever alter your perspective on the world and yourself. Nietzsche was not just a philosopher, he was a provocateur, a destroyer of illusions, someone who dared to strip away the comforting veil of morality and face the raw, often brutal reality of existence. His work, Beyond Good and Evil, challenges the rigid dichotomies of right and wrong, urging us to transcend them and adopt a more profound, liberated view of life. But to fully grasp his argument, we must first explore the origins of morality itself and question whether it is what we have always assumed it to be. Think about this. When you label something as good or evil, what are you really saying? Most people assume these terms point to objective moral truths, principles that exist independently of human perception, woven into the very fabric of reality. But Nietzsche argued that morality is not an inherent feature of the universe. Rather, it is a historical and social construct, continuously reshaped over centuries by those in power. According to Nietzsche, morality manifests in two fundamental forms: master morality and slave morality. Master morality is the code of the strong, those who embrace life fully, take risks, and define their own values. It is built on personal excellence, power, and the affirmation of one's existence. Slave morality, by contrast, arises from those who lack strength and influence. It is rooted in resentment, in the rejection of power, and in the glorification of humility, meekness, and suffering as virtues. Nietzsche argued that slave morality emerged as a reaction to strength and success, demonizing power and celebrating submission and self-sacrifice. This shift in values marked one of the most profound transformations in human history, one that, according to Nietzsche, suppressed individuality and encouraged conformity. But here is where Nietzsche's argument becomes truly radical. He did not merely claim that morality is subjective. He asserted that traditional morality, particularly that shaped by religious traditions, is fundamentally opposed to life itself. He saw it as a system designed not to uplift individuals, but to make them obedient and dependent. In his view, religious morality represses human instincts, discourages ambition, and conditions people to feel guilt for their natural desires. It turns strength into a flaw and weakness into a virtue. This is why Nietzsche famously declared, "God is dead." This was not just a critique of religion, it was a declaration that the moral frameworks built around the divine were crumbling. The values that had once bound society together were losing their grip, leaving humanity standing at the threshold of an enormous transformation. However, this transformation comes with a challenge. Without the guiding force of traditional morality, what replaces it? Nietzsche's answer was both exhilarating and terrifying. Beyond good and evil lies the Ubermensch, the overman, an individual who has shattered the inherited chains of morality and forged a new path based on personal strength, creativity, and willpower. The overman does not live by the rules imposed by society, tradition, or religion. He is his own lawgiver, his own judge, the sole architect of his meaning and purpose. But before we can fully understand the overman, we must first confront a deeper implication of Nietzsche's critique. If morality is not an absolute truth, but a system designed by those in power, then how do we determine what truly holds value in life? Are we genuinely free to define our own morality, or are we still bound by the lingering shadows of a system that no longer serves us? This is not just a philosophical dilemma, it is a deeply personal one. Because at some point in your life, you have undoubtedly felt the weight of societal expectations, the pressure to conform to a moral code you did not choose, the fear of stepping beyond the boundaries imposed upon you. Nietzsche forces us to ask, are these values genuinely ours, or have they been imposed upon us? Do we act out of true conviction, or are we merely following a script written by others? The answers to these questions could upend everything you thought you knew. And as we delve further into Nietzsche's exploration of power, will, and human nature, we will see how these ideas extend far beyond philosophy into the very core of how we live our daily lives. Because this is not just a theory, it is an invitation to question everything you've been taught, to reclaim your own destiny, and to discover the most shocking revelation of all. If morality is a construct, if good and evil are not universal laws but instruments of control, then what does this mean for how we live? If the values shaping our world were designed to subdue rather than liberate, how do we begin to break free? Nietzsche's answer lies in one of his most powerful and unsettling concepts, the will to power. Unlike traditional philosophies that define life through morality, reason, or metaphysics, Nietzsche argued that the driving force behind all existence is not truth or goodness, but power itself. Every living being, from the tiniest organism to the most ambitious human, is propelled by an intrinsic drive, the will to grow, to expand, to assert, to dominate. This is not mere survival. The will to power is something far deeper, the fundamental impulse to overcome, to impose meaning upon chaos, to shape reality rather than be shaped by it. But here's where things get truly provocative. Nietzsche believed that most people have been conditioned to suppress their will to power. They have been taught that ambition is dangerous, that desire is sinful, that striving for greatness is arrogance rather than a natural expression of life itself. This suppression is no accident. It is the very essence of slave morality, designed to keep people small, weak, and dependent. By convincing individuals to deny their natural instincts, slave morality ensures their continued obedience to the structures that control them. This brings us to a difficult yet crucial question. If traditional morality represses the will to power, what happens when we break free? What happens when we reject the inherited values of the past and begin forging our own? Nietzsche saw this transformation as essential for human evolution. He envisioned a new kind of being, one who transcends conventional morality and embraces life in its fullest intensity. This is the overman. The overman is not simply stronger or more intelligent. He is someone who has completely shattered the constraints imposed by society and religion. He does not seek validation, does not conform to the morality of the masses. Instead, he creates his own values, his own meaning, his own purpose. This idea is radical because it suggests that there is no preordained meaning to life, no divine law dictating what we must do, no cosmic justice ensuring good is rewarded and evil is punished. There is only existence itself, raw, chaotic, and open to interpretation. And in the face of this terrifying freedom, the overman does not retreat into illusions of security. He embraces the challenge of existence. He does not ask, "What is the meaning of life?" Instead, he asks, What meaning will I create? But here's the ultimate realization. Most people are not ready to become overmen. Most cling to the comfort of externally imposed values because the weight of forging their own is too great. This is why Nietzsche did not see the overman as an inevitability, but as a rare and difficult achievement, one that few will ever have the courage to pursue. And so we step into the unknown, where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes profoundly personal. If the overman is the future of humanity, the question is no longer abstract. Are you ready to take that step? Are you prepared to leave behind the inherited moral frameworks that have shaped your reality and take full responsibility for forging your own path? This is no easy feat. It demands a fundamental re-examination of everything you've been taught. It calls for strength, independence, and an unshakable will to stand alone. But the reward, it is unlike anything society can offer: true freedom. Not the illusion of freedom handed down by institutions, but the raw, untamed liberty of an individual who answers only to himself. Yet, Nietzsche's vision carries an even more unsettling implication. If morality is a human construct, if good and evil are merely shifting perspectives, then what becomes of justice? What of human rights? What of the very principles that form the foundation of civilization? Are these too nothing more than instruments of power used by the strong to govern the weak? These questions push us into dangerous territory, for if we follow Nietzsche's logic to its ultimate conclusion, we arrive at a world devoid of moral absolutes, a world where strength and creativity dictate value, and where each individual must navigate existence without an external guide. And herein lies the greatest challenge. How do we reconcile such radical freedom with the need for order? Can we transcend traditional morality without descending into chaos? Is it possible to craft a new ethical framework, not built on fear or submission, but on strength, creativity, and self-mastery? Nietzsche does not provide answers. He issues a challenge to break free, a challenge to think independently, a challenge to seize control of our own lives and forge something entirely new. But there remains one final revelation, a truth that redefines everything. In the next section, we will uncover it, for there is one last key to Nietzsche's philosophy that, once understood, will forever change your perspective. Are you ready to face it? If you've followed this journey so far, you have already begun to see the world through Nietzsche's eyes. You've questioned morality, challenged the notion of absolute good and evil, and confronted the possibility that traditional values may be nothing more than mechanisms of control. But now, we must go deeper, to the very core of Nietzsche's most unsettling and transformative idea. Everything we have examined so far leads to one ultimate realization. If morality is not fixed, if human beings are driven by the will to power, and if the overman represents the next stage of human evolution, then how should we live? How should we act in a world where values are not discovered but created? Nietzsche's answer is as radical as it is daunting: eternal recurrence. This concept is often misunderstood, but it is more than a mere thought experiment. It is a challenge that forces us to rethink the very way we live. Imagine this. At the moment of your death, you are told that you must live this exact life over again, not just once, but infinitely, in an endless cycle with no escape. Every choice, every joy, every mistake, every regret, repeated for eternity. Would you curse this fate, or would you embrace it? Nietzsche believed that how we respond to this idea reveals everything about our relationship with existence. If the thought of reliving your life fills you with dread, it is a sign that you are not living authentically, that in some way you are betraying your own nature. But if you can face your life and say yes, if you can affirm every moment, every struggle, every triumph, then you have reached the highest state of being. You have transcended the fear of suffering and embraced life in its totality. This is what it truly means to go beyond good and evil. It is not merely a rejection of conventional morality, it is an affirmation of existence itself in all its chaos, pain, and unpredictability. It is the recognition that life is not to be endured, but fully embraced, not because it is perfect, but because it is yours. This is the mindset of the Ubermensch, not one who seeks happiness in the traditional sense, but one who takes absolute ownership of his existence, without hesitation, without regret. But let's pause and reflect. How many people truly live this way? How many of us accept our lives as they are, without wishing for escape, without hoping for some final reward or divine justice? Most live as though life is a burden, as though suffering is something to be avoided at all costs. They seek comfort, security, and external validation. They endure the present in anticipation of a future that will somehow justify their struggles. But Nietzsche warns us, this is an illusion. The only moment that holds weight is now. The only life worth living is one you would willingly choose to repeat forever. This is where Nietzsche's philosophy transcends theory and becomes a call to action. Because if you take eternal recurrence seriously, you can no longer afford to waste time. You can no longer live in fear. Every decision becomes infinitely significant, not just for today, but for eternity. So ask yourself, if this moment were to last forever, would you be content? Are you living in a way that you would willingly repeat for all eternity? If the answer is no, then what is stopping you from reshaping your life, from becoming the master of your own fate? Nietzsche's philosophy is not for the faint of heart. It demands courage, responsibility, and an unbreakable will. It asks you to stand alone, to reject the comforting lies of conventional morality, and to embrace the raw, unfiltered reality of existence. But for those who dare to walk this path, the reward is unlike anything most will ever experience: true, unshackled freedom. Yet there is still one last truth, one final revelation that ties everything together, a truth so profound that it may completely alter the way you see yourself and the world. In the next and final section, we will uncover it, because there is one last piece of Nietzsche's vision. Now, we arrive at the final and most unsettling realization, the truth that binds everything together. If we have followed Nietzsche's path this far, we have dismantled the illusion of absolute morality. We have questioned the foundations of good and evil. We have confronted the will to power, the necessity of self-created values, and the challenge of living a life worthy of eternal recurrence. But now comes the ultimate question. If we reject inherited morality, if we take full responsibility for our existence, if we forge our own values, then what happens to meaning itself? This is the terrifying heart of Nietzsche's philosophy. For once we strip away the inherited structures that have guided humanity for centuries. Once we move beyond good and evil, what remains? What prevents us from collapsing into nihilism, into the belief that life itself is meaningless? Nietzsche's greatest warning is that the death of God is not merely the collapse of religion, it is the collapse of meaning as we know it. When he proclaimed God is dead, it was not a triumphant declaration, but a foreboding caution. The end of traditional morality does not automatically lead to liberation. It creates a void that must either be filled with new values or with despair. And so, Nietzsche's final challenge is the most difficult of all. Can you create your own meaning? Without reliance on inherited beliefs, without seeking validation from others, can you look at existence in its purest form and say, yes, this is enough? This is the ultimate test of the Ubermensch, not merely to reject the old, but to build something new, to impose meaning upon a meaningless world. So, The choice is yours. Will you rise to this challenge or retreat into the safety of the familiar? Nietzsche's philosophy does not offer comfort. It offers awakening. The only question left is, what will you do with it?